Right, Baruch Hashem, and I need that. Okay, Baruch Hashem. All right, welcome everybody to the Parsha class, Parsha Re'eh 5784, and I'll be your host today. I'm kidding. So the Parsha is one of three Parshiot in the Torah that has a lot of mitzvot, just mitzvah after mitzvah, and it starts with Re'eh. It continues next week, Shoftim, and after that Kitetse, and lots of mitzvot in these Parshiot, lots to learn. And it's the challenge in learning a parsha like this, or to give it an hour class on a parsha like this, is you have to sort of pick and choose what you think will be most interesting to people. And we've been doing that for a few years now. This is not our first rodeo, but it's worth noting that there's a lot to say. One thing we never really, I mean, we've mentioned it before, but we've had other commentaries on it in the past. But the very first verse in this parsha, it's called Re'eh for a reason. Re'eh means to see. It's a command. See, look. And so let's get right into sharing the source sheet. Looks a little something like that. Emailed to you earlier today, I hope. So the very first verse, what's called eponymous verse, from which the parsha gets its name. Re'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala. Look, I am giving you in front of your face right now blessing and curse. He goes on to say, this is Moshe speaking, and he goes on to say, if you do what you're supposed to do, if you do the mitzvot, if you listen to Hashem, you're going to get bracha, you're going to get blessing in this world and in the world to come. You'll enjoy your life more, and you'll have you'll have lesser incidents of depression and higher incidents of happiness and joy in this world if you do the mitzvot, and in the world to come. Well, it doesn't even there's no words I can say that can give you an indication of how great your reward is going to be in the world to come. There's no reason even to bother, because we have never seen, nobody's ever seen that world to come back and report it back to us, how great it is. So so there's a reward and there's a punishment, and we want to obviously stay away from the punishment and earn the reward. With that said, Rabbeinu Bachai, in his classic commentary, points out, and there's just one shtickle one little piece I wanted to share with you here. It's a long piece, but if you'll indulge me for just a moment, one of the most important things to understand in all of this is that Lefisha brachva klala na'atzlin mishtei midot shebehen nivra ha'olam. They are this blessing and this curse are attached, they are related to, they are based on the two midot, the two characteristics with which Hashem created the world. Midot arachamim, midot hadin, arachamim and din, the mercy and judgment, truth, justice on the one hand, strict and unbending on the one hand, and kindness and gentleness on the other. So they are any one person with a mind can realize and recognize these great things. A moment. Sorry. It's always something, unless it's nothing. And then he goes on to say that I'm trying to find a particular thing I was looking for. Yeah. והנה נתבאר בפסוק זה שהרשות והבחירה בידו של האדם. The most important thing to recognize when you're reading this verse, the thing that this tells you more than anything else, is that the choice of whether to get the blessing or to get the curse is not just haphazard. It's not like you know, it's not like a lottery. It's not just a toss of the dice. It is dependent on your behavior. You choose this behavior, you get bracha. You choose that behavior, chas v'shalom, you get klala. It's a choice. It is this freedom of choice that Rabbeinu Bachai begins to write about. Any quotes here? The Rambam in Hilchot Teshuvah, very very relevant this time of the year. So the reshut, the decision, the bechira, the freedom of choice, biyado shel adam, is in the hands of the person. Rasul hadrich atzma b'derech yeshara, or lehityatzev al derech lo tov. He can either go on the straight path, or he or she can go on the not so straight path. V'chol misor b'rtzono v'kol talu b'bechirato. It all depends on that person's choice, nothing else. What you get depends on what you put into it. And right, amar hakatuv. That's why the verse says, "Mi yitain v'yeh levav ze lahem lira oti lamad she'ein hakadosh baruch hu gozer al ha'adam liyot tzadik or rasha ashi yasa tova or ra." Hashem doesn't judge a person as good or bad until the person does good or bad. We're not basing our decision. Hashem doesn't base his decision on your looks or on like a random lottery. Hashem bases his decision of how you are judged based on your behavior, and you will see blessing and curse, God forbid, in your life, depending on how you behave. It's a given. Now he doesn't talk about this, but it's worth discussing. I'm sure the question comes up often enough, but we know, someone's going to say, that there's plenty of bad people who have an easy life, have a quote unquote possibly even good life, right? They're happy, they travel, they have money to invest, etc. And we know a lot of people who are tzaddikim, who are suffering, who are poor, etc. So how does that make sense? So the answer is, some of it, there's a lot of answers. One of the answers is it's a matter of attitude. If you know that your reward is waiting for you in the world to come, and you're not in a hurry, right? After 120 years, you're going to get what you deserve, and you know it. So it doesn't really matter if you're not if you're living in some degree of poverty today, if you owe money, and if you can't afford certain delicacies or whatever. That's not that's not the end all, and that's not the end result of your behavior. There's still a world to come. Death is not the end. That's one answer. Another answer is, yeah, you don't know that this terrible person is a terrible person. He might be terrible to you, but you don't know everything this person's done, how many lives this person saved, or whatever. Maybe that is part of the reward this person deserves. And if the person is indeed a bad person or whatever, if your judgment, which maybe shouldn't be coming from you anyway, but if your judgment is that the person is bad, and if you're right, then maybe that whatever reward that person deserves is getting in this world, and in the world to come, you'll have very little. So there's all kinds of ways that this could be balanced out, and this is not again, this is not something that the Rebbeinu Bachai is dealing with here. The point is that the good and the bad that you get in your life, you can connect the dots and figure out why you got what you got, what good and what bad you've gotten, what how you deserved it. Maybe you can't do it now. Maybe you'll have to wait till 120 years. But when you look back at your life, you will see how all the dots connect and everything makes sense and Hashem runs the world like He created the world with the Chesed. Olam b'Chesed Yibana. Right. So that's the Rabbeinu Bachai. He says quite a bit more. It's worth reading, and I highly recommend it if you need my recommendation for the Rabbeinu Bachai there in the source sheet with English translation even. Okay, again, I can't vouch for the English translation, as I say every week. The translation is from Sefaria, and a lot of people have access to that. Okay. The Torah goes on. Moshe tells the Jewish people how great the land of Israel is that they're about to receive, and when they receive it, they're no longer going to be able to serve on bamot. We talked about that in previous years. A bama was a personal altar, and it somehow represented your relationship with Hashem, divorced from the community's relationship with Hashem. And what Israel is supposed to represent is the Jewish people individually and as a community serving Hashem together. It's a very powerful thing, and it's sort of mirrored in our tefillah, in our shul system, right? Of course, everybody who wants to can daven on their own, if sometimes they have to, and if they want to, I guess they could. But the Gemara tells us in the Masechta Brachot and in other places how amazing and how powerful your tefillah becomes when it's echoed, and better put, it's enhanced by the presence of other people. Other people are praying also, and so your prayer becomes stronger. Like a radio wave, it has a higher wavelength all of a sudden, and can transmit further, and it can get farther into the gates of heaven. Once we're told about that we're not going to have bamot anymore, we're also told that we're not going to be able to eat meat. That we'll be able. Sorry, other way around. We'll be able to eat meat of any kind as long as it's shechted and it's kosher, etc., etc. We'll be able to eat that even without giving the meat as a sacrifice. According to Rashi, this is to contrast with how meat was eaten in the desert, in the midbar. So the Jewish people did indeed have to give some to the Mishkan if they wanted any kind of meat at all. So that was different, and pretty soon after that, at chapter 13, we're told about the false prophet. Again, this is something that has happened in our past, and something that might happen again in the future. You never know. People who claim to have nevuah and prophecy, and they say things that are opposite of what Hashem would want them to say. All right. Then we get to chapter 14. And in chapter 14, we are told, Bani matem la Hashem Elokeichem. You are children of Hashem, your God. By the way, it's a powerful, powerful idea. Hashem is our Father and loves us no matter what, right? So based on that, lo titgodedu, don't cut yourself. Lo tasimu karcha beineinechem lamet, and don't shave the front of your head because of the dead. So apparently this is a practice that people used to do. They would cut themselves or they would shave their head when somebody died. Don't do that. Why? Ki am kadosh ata laHashem Elokecha. You are a holy nation to Hashem. Uvecha bachar Hashem liyot lo am segula. Hashem chose you to be a treasured nation. Mikol amim, from all the other nations. Asher al pnei hadamah, that are on the face of the earth. So the question becomes, why? What's the connection between you are children to Hashem and don't do this whole cutting business? So we've said in previous years, we brought from Rav Hirsch, and I think we quoted the Sforno, different reasons. And today what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at a Ramban. Because the Ramban quotes Rashi, it quotes the Ibn Ezra, argues with both. He sometimes agrees with one or the other. Usually the Rashi he might agree with. The Ibn Ezra almost always he argues with. But he has in his introduction to his commentary to the Chumash, the Ramban talks about how Rashi is like the father of all commentaries. He gives him so much respect. Obviously, he knows the Ibn Ezra pretty well himself. If he's going to argue with him, he must have read him pretty well. So he starts out by telling us, "Bani matam Hashem Elokechem." He says, "Gam zo mitzvah muvoeret." This is also a mitzvah, as many of the mitzvot in Sefer Devarim are. They're mentioned in greater detail than previously. So this was already mentioned, is what he's saying. Sha'amar b'Torah Kohanim, as already says in Torah Kohanim in Vayikra, that lo karchu karcha lo yikruchu karcha b'rosham. Don't make a bald spot on your head. V'v'saram lo yisutu saretet, and don't make a gash in your skin. So it seems to be that this is an elaboration of that mitzvah mentioned there. That's in Vayikra 21:5. Chaf Aleph Hey. And now, Yivaer, now it's explained, Ki lo ba'avur ma'alat hakohanim bilvad, shehiskir sham, shehem kedoshim le'elokehem, tziva b'hem zeh. And now that we've explained that this the level of the Kohanim, that they're supposed to be a great people for Hashem, now we have to understand that this prohibition is for them as well. So sorry, the other way around. Just because, so in obviously in Torah Kohanim, hence the name, right? In Vayikra, most of the mitzvot are about Kohanim. So over there, you might think only Kohanim aren't allowed to do this. They're holy people to Hashem. So that's why the Torah now has to tell us also this for everybody. The aval kol eda kulam kedoshim v'chulchem banim la'Hashem elokechem kamo Kohanim. And now this verse tells us that we are children to Hashem. That means we're all holy. We're all great. We all deserve to treat ourselves with a degree of holiness, just like the Kohanim. Im kein hishmeru gam atem b'mitzvah hahi kimotam. Therefore, you have to keep this mitzvah just like they do. Ve'al dat rabbeinu shishnehem eina ela al hamed. And according to the rabbis, this is all specifically talking about when this kind of behavior was done as a way of mourning a dead person. So why did, so in that case, the obvious question becomes, if that's the case, over there it's talking to Kohanim, here it's talking to everybody else, and everybody else needs to know that there's a mitzvah for them too. So why do you have to tell it to the Kohanim at all? Kohanim are also part of all the rest of the Jews. So just have it here and not have it there. So, right, that's the common problem you get yourself into once you say that this is a repetition of something that's already been said, and you give an explanation of why it has to be repeated. Now you have to tell me why it has to have been said the first time also. V'yitachen shahaita hamitzvah harishona b'kohanim lemor she'im haya kohen mukrach umegudad einenu rui la'avoda. So to teach you that a kohen who does this, not only is it wrong, not only is it an avera, not only does he maybe get lashes or whatever else, but also this Kohen who does this cannot do the avoda, cannot do the service of being a Kohen. Why? You cannot desecrate Hashem's name. So that's you can't ignore his mitzvah and then do whatever you want. And then serve, and pretend like you're serving him publicly. This service is the Chil Hashem. B'kan be'er ki hamitzvah gam l'Yisrael v'hutzrachnu l'shteim. That's why we have to have both of these verses to focus our attention on the fact that that we too cannot do this kind of behavior either. All right, that wasn't actually what I wanted to focus on. Here's what I wanted to say. Rashi tells us why is it that we're not allowed to do this? Lefi she'atem banav shel makom atem ruim liyod naim v'lo gedudim umukrachim. Because you are children to Hashem, it's not right to look like this, to be all disgusting and cut up and shaved. It doesn't look nice, and we're supposed to be, if we have this elevated status of children of the King of Kings. In other words, we are the princes and princesses of Hashem, of the world. So it's not becoming to walk around like worn out shmatas, right? So that's what Rashi says. Ramban does not like this. Ve'enu nachon. It's not correct. She'im ken tiyeh hamitzvah gam shelo al hamet. If we just said from the rabbis that this is all about a sense of mourning, that don't do this when you're mourning, right? When you're sad about somebody dying, don't cut yourself, don't shave your head, or whatever. So why is Rashi saying it doesn't look nice? It never looks nice. It doesn't look nice even when you're not in mourning. So it should never be allowed. And the rabbis only forbid it with all the punishments and everything else, only if you're doing it as a sign of mourning. So Ramban doesn't like Rashi's idea. And he says, Rabbeinu Avraham, that's the Ibn Ezra, writes, Amar, Achar shetedu she'atem banim la'Hashem ohev etchem yoter min ha'av livno. It's this famous line that what this teaches you is that Hashem, by calling us children of Hashem, that shows that Hashem loves us. A fatherly love. In fact, says the Ibn Ezra, more than a father loves his son, Hashem loves you. Right? Al titgodudu al kol meid sheyaseh. Therefore, don't cut yourself because of anything that Hashem does. Ki kol ma sheyaseh letovu. Because everything he's doing is good. What are you mourning for? Why are you sad? Somebody died? Hashem wanted the person to die. Hashem loves you. He knows what he's doing. Hashem made that person die. You think you would do things differently? You'd do things better? Hashem knows what's best. V'im lo tivinuhu kasher lo yavinu babanim haktanim sheyaseh avihim rak yismuchu alav. And even when you don't understand it, just like little kids don't always understand what a father does, what the parents do, but they still listen, hopefully, when they're young, especially. Right? Ki am kadosh ata eincha kishar kol hagoyim al kein lo taseh b'maasehem. So you're a holy people, and that's why you can't act like the other nations. You can't do what they do. They cut themselves. You don't cut yourself because you're this great nation. Lefi dati, ki tam am kadosh haftacha bikiyum hanefashot lefanav yitbarach. Says the Ramban. I have my own pshat. I have my own explanation of what this is. From the fact that you are a holy nation, this is basically a promise that this is a promise from Hashem that these nefashot that left through Hashem, obviously Hashem made these people go. Yomar acharei she'ata am kadosh segulat Hashem lo yisrael lakim nefesh v'chashav machshavot levilti yidach mimenu nidach. So Hashem knows what he's doing. He took out that soul. He's going to bring back that soul at the right time. It's not right for you to mourn these people this way. even if this person died in when they were young, below Yasser Hakatuv Habechi. The Torah doesn't say you can't weep, that you can't cry for the person who died. Ki hateva yitorer livkot beferud oavim indudam af chaim. It's our nature. It's normal human nature to cry when we're separated for somebody we love, in life or not. Mikan smach Rabotenu zichronam levracha ba'asram yitabel al nefesh yoter midai. So it's from this that the rabbis understood that that we're talking about mourning somebody. We're mourning somebody too much. To cry, yes, we can cry. Not because we're doubting Hashem's justice or anything like that. We just miss people who we love. It's normal and natural to mourn them, but to mourn them that much, to say, the whole world is wrong. I'm going to cut myself. I'm going to shave my head. Nothing makes sense. Nothing is right. So to do that, that's already the next level. That's where you're basically questioning Hashem's justice, and that's what's wrong. Otherwise, yes, to mourn, to be sad, like the Ibn Ezra says, that's fine. That's normal. But we're not doing it too much to the point where we're basically saying that we're judging Hashem's justice. On the same verse, and I spent a little time on this verse in case you couldn't tell. The Gemara in Yevamot says an interesting thing. The Gemara in Yevamot 13b and onto 14a. The Gemara there understands the verse "lo go to do," not to cut yourself, as basically a warning to make sure that the Jewish people are not splintered up. Don't cut yourself. Don't cut yourself off from other Jewish people. We should all have one big happy community. Shouldn't have different groups, etc., wars and such. That should not happen. From this verse, this is the only verse in the Torah that tells us that we need to have Jewish unity, according to the Gemara's understanding. Amanda Amar Asu Krina and Khan Lo Titgodedu Lo Tasu Agudot. Don't make different groups. And to give an example, the Gemara there has from Abaye Ki Amram Lo Titgodedu. What it means. An example is Kagon Shtei Bate Dinim Be'ir Achat, 2 different courts in the same city. Halalu Morim Kedivrei Beit Shammai, one judges like according to Beit Shammai. Halalu Morim Kedivrei Beit Hillel. Aval Shtei B'dei Dinim V'Shtei Ayarot Leitlan Ba. If there's 2 different courts in the same town, but they judge the same way, they're on the same path, they're in agreement. So that's fine. That's not a agudot. There could have been a practical reason why we needed 2 different courts, but for them to have completely opposite opinions, that's a problem already. Says Rav Shamshon Rafael Hirsch. He's going to connect this because we just said lo titgodedu means not to cut yourself. And we had plenty of commentary on that. We had the Ramban quoting Rashi and the Ibn Ezra, etc. Right? And then the Gemara, turns out, tells us that it has to do with not our body, but the national body. How is that? How can we understand this 2 very different ways? 2 almost opposite ways of understanding these 2 words, lo titgodedu. The first Rav Hirsch says that it means not to make cuts on your body and in your bodies, but in Yevamot, our sages say that this prohibition applies also to the national body. And from here, they derive the halacha lo tasu agudot, like we said. We are to remain united in the observance of the Torah and not permit differences of opinion in teachings and decisions to split the nation into dissenting communities, opposing factions. Indeed, a separate group of people, a military detachment, is called a gedud. Hence, lo tidgodudu can mean not only do not cut yourself, but also do not separate yourselves, do not divide into factions. He has a grammatical point here. We're going to skip for the moment. But here he starts talking about what it means when differences of opinion are okay in Judaism and when they're not. Fundamental ideas here. This then is the admonition that in addition to Isur Gedida Lemait is also expressed in our verse, differences of opinion regarding the interpretation of the Torah or regarding the conclusions to be drawn from the Torah must not lead to schisms that would break up the community, with one faction following the exponents of one view and another faction following the exponents of another view. Could go in Beit Din Shah Be'ir Echad. So he quotes the Gemara, like we said before, with Hillel and Shammai. The Aguda Achad of the united community shall not be split into agudot. Rather, all the differences of opinion shall be settled in accordance with the rules provided by the Torah itself for deciding such disputes. Thereby, uniformity of practice shall be maintained to the extent that it is regulated by the Torah. In other words, so far he's saying, and by the way, this is going to get a little bit deeper. Just hold on to your hats. Buckle up. The idea here is that Jewish unity does not occur when everybody does whatever they want. Jewish unity, as the word unity implies, happens when everybody follows the unified one Torah. The institution set up by this Torah law generally makes sure to maintain uniform agreements in the practice of the mitzvot. Below, we will see that the appointment of the supreme body of Torah authority brought about the conclusive resolution of all the differences of opinion regarding the interpretation of the Torah and regarding the conclusions to be drawn from it. Indeed, over the course of 1,200 years, until the first centuries of the Second Temple period, there was complete agreement in the practice of the mitzvot. Just one dispute was not resolved, and it concerned only the consequences of a rabbinic preventive measure, mishtamish b'balei chayim, in relation to the observance of the mitzvah of smicha on Yom Tov. Even Hillel and Shammai differed only in three matters, of which only one concerned a Torah duty, whereas the other two again concerned only rabbinic preventive measures. In the time of their disciples, however, political turmoil erupted, and Torah students were unable to study in a clear and composed frame of mind. When catastrophe struck with the fall of the state, oppression, persecution, and the dispersion severed the connection between the disciples and the Torah masters, between scattered communities and the center of national life. Only then did it happen that doubts and disputes regarding the tradition and its interpretation remained unresolved, and this then led to the local differences in observance. Unity was subsequently restored only by the activity of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who collected, clarified, and decided the disputes regarding the tradition and its interpretation. The results of his work are set down in the halacha of the Mishnah. So what Rav Hirsch just did is brilliant, by the way. He's giving you some history, but at the same time, he's also telling you that the whole point of Torah literature, the basis of the creation of the Mishnah, is all about unifying the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people, again, will only be unified when their practice is unified. When they do one thing, not one thing, but when everything they do is that they do it the same way. 250 years later, Ravina and Rav Ashi did similar work toward uniformity of practice by editing the Gemara in a period when communities and individuals were even more scattered and dispersed. In such times, when there is no supreme national body of Torah authority, the local differences in practice of the mitzvah will inevitably arise. The Rambam in Hilchot Mamrim adds the case where such an authorized body exists, but the parties to the dispute have not yet appealed to this body or have not received its decision. For such times, it says, Lo tidgodedu, lo ta'asu agudot. Don't make splits. This mitzvah requires that within a unified community, Beit din be'ir achat, or according to the Rambam in Hilchot Avodah Zarah, even in the case of two communities in one city, shnei batei din be'ir achat, all differences of opinion regarding observance of the mitzvot shall be decided in accordance with the existing regulations for such doubts and questions, and thus a greater schism in the fulfillment of the Torah shall be prevented. Consider, says Rav Hirsch, that all the laws of the preceding chapter dealt with the harm that can be done by the powerful influence of certain individuals upon their immediate circles. This is what's talking about there with regard to people who try to convince others to worship idolatry. Consider too that, as we believe, the prohibition of gedida shrita lenefesh is intended to counteract the overvaluation of individual personalities. Finally, consider the splitting into many factions, agudot, against which the other interpretation of lotit godedu warns us, generally results where there is a difference of opinion between two personalities and various segments of the community follow the lead of one or the other of these personalities. Considering all those factors, we understand the deep interconnection between these two prohibitions, both of which are derived from lotit godedu. Lotit godedu is all about, says Rav Hirsch, an individual sticking out or a community sticking out, when indeed the whole point of Torah observance is for us to become unified and serve Hashem the way He wants, not the way we want. All right, so let's. I could go on and on. The Jewish unity is a very hot topic. People talk about it all the time, and it seems like, my opinion, based on this Rav Hirsch, seems like very often the people who talk about Jewish unity are literally talking about Jewish disunity. Let everybody do what they want. Don't judge. Coexist. That's not unity. To coexist literally means to exist together with another, somebody different, not a unified thing, but a disunity. Like I said, this is not it's not preaching time. We got to learn the Chumash. But this is these are the lessons we learn when we read the commentaries on the Chumash and see what the brilliance of the Torah is, and how the Torah wants us to follow it. A few verses later, chapter 14, still verse 8. We're going to spend a lot of time in chapter 14 today, in case you didn't know. The rest of the chapter there deals with kosher, non-kosher animals. As we had previously in the Torah chapter, Parsha Re'eh, here we have also the list of kosher, non-kosher animals, birds, fish, etc. And one of the animals that's famously not kosher, in fact, for some reason, which is beyond me, it's like the symbol of non-kosher animals, and it's the pig. I shouldn't say it's totally beyond me. There's a good historical reason for why the goyim who eat pig on a regular basis, why they are confused about why we can't. So that's probably why that's the focus for them. You know, they don't really question why we don't eat dog or cat, or a horse. They don't do that either, generally, unless they're desperate. All right. Anyway, chapter 14, verse 8. Bet HaChazir, the other animal that's not kosher, is the pig. Kosher animals have split hooves and they chew their cud. The chazir is not kosher. Why? Ki mafris parsa, even though it has split hooves, velo gera, but it does not chew its cud. Tamehu, it's not kosher. Lachem b'saram lo tuchelu, from its meat don't eat. U'nivatam lo tigaw, and don't touch its carcass. Don't touch its flesh. The Midrash in Vayikra Rabbah Yud Gimel Hey 13:5, and by the way, this is the very, very last three lines of a giant Midrash. So if you're looking for it, just look for the end. I cut out most of it for you here, but it says Lama Nikra Shema Chazir. Why is this animal called? Why is the pig in Hebrew called a chazir? It's very strange because the word chazar means to return. So there are various answers, by the way, given. One is that it returns to its own mess, etc. It eats its own dirt, let's call it for politeness sake. So that's one thing, but it says here another reason why it's called a chazir, shemachazeret atara levalaha hada huktiv, as it says in Ovadia, v'alu mushim b'har Zion lishpot et har Esav v'etal Hashem hamlucha, in Ovadia 121. Second. Oh boy. All right, so it's called a chazir because it will return its atera, its crown to the crown's owner. In other words, it will become kosher someday, as it says, and the proof of this is in Ovadia, where it says that the world is going to change, it's including Esav, which is somehow symbolized by the Chazir. Even there's going to be Torah, right? Lumoshim b'har Zion l'shpot et har Esav v'haital Hashem hamlucha, and even the mountain of Esav will return to Hashem. So to the thing that represents Esav, which is the pig, it's worthy of another discussion another time. Just have to take my word for it for now. So that the pig too will return to being Hashem's, otherwise known as kosher, otherwise known as edible. Big question about that. In halacha, since we're talking about kosher and non-kosher food, it's worth talking about this concept. In halacha, there's a concept called davar sheyesh lo matirin, something that will or can become kosher in a little bit of a, just wait a little while, or not even a little while, it will eventually become kosher. Examples of this are chametz on Pesach, an egg that's born on, that's been laid on Yom Tov. Eventually, after Yom Tov, that egg will be edible. Eventually, after Pesach, that chametz will be kosher, assuming it wasn't owned by a Jew, whatever. Whole other discussion. Why this is important is because ordinarily a davar sheyesh lo matirin is something that can become kosher eventually if it falls into a non-kosher or a otherwise kosher substance, a soup, say, if chametz falls into a soup on Pesach, it is not batal, it is not nullified, right? Same thing goes for this egg. This egg is never kosher. Even if it falls into a pile of 1,000 kosher eggs on Yom Tov, you cannot eat any of those eggs. None. There's no bittul, there's no nullification when it comes to something that's going to be kosher after a while anyway. Just wait. Just you wait. It'll become kosher. So don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. You'll eat it sometime in the future. Right now, you can't. All right. Writes the Khatam Sofer on this verse, based on this midrash that chazir will become kosher someday. Now we have a problem with the chazir in our kosher halacha, because again, it sounds like a pig now will become kosher someday. So therefore, if some pig falls into a kosher soup and it's 60-1, whereas ordinarily something that's not kosher that falls into a kosher soup and it's 60-1, a ratio of 60 ounces of soup versus 1 ounce of this non-kosher thing, it's nullified. It's like it's not even there. There are some exceptions, and one of them is this davar sheyesh lo matirin, things that will eventually become kosher, like chametz on Pesach, like the egg on Yom Tov, and apparently, like this pig. Pig should be a davar sheyesh lo matirin, because the midrash says that in the future it will be kosher. Ay, ay, ay. That's not how we hold in halacha. In halacha, we don't do that. In halacha, it can be batal. If a pig accidentally falls into a vat of soup, and if it's too small of an amount based on how much the kosher stuff there is in the soup remains kosher. You should take out what you can find, right? But that's a different story. So how do we understand this? So he says, and I'm just going to fast forward to the underlined portion here. She'otam hachayot ubehemot shemar farsotahem enam sudokot behema nilchamim beraglehem umakin. No, that's not what I wanted to point out. Sorry, 1 second. Right. Yishtanu tivam. Their nature will be different. So when the Midrash says that pigs will be kosher in the future, it's not because what we know of as a pig will just, when Mashiach comes, is going to say, it's kosher now. Go ahead and eat it. That's not what's going to happen. The nature of the pig is going to change because animals develop, animals adapt to different environments. So the pig of the future will be able to have these split hooves and will also chew its cud and will be a kosher animal. We're going to call it a chazir because for all intents and purposes, it acts like a hog or like a pig does. Excuse me. But this particular pig, the pig of the future, will be kosher because its nature will be that it will have all the right symbols for kosher animals. Okay, last piece for today. Also chapter 4. No, I lied. This is already chapter 16. So towards the end of the parsha, as is famous, we have Aser Taser. We have the famous reading of the Torah that we have on the last day of Yom Tov, Aser Taser, that the important mitzvah of giving tzedakah, and how we should be that we should gladden the poor of our people so that everybody can be happy, especially on the Yomim Tovim. Therefore, the Torah then segues into the Yomim Tovim and lists the holidays and how we're supposed to be happy on them. Very uniquely, regarding one particular holiday of Shavuot, the last holiday that we celebrated, by the way. It's already a long time ago, right? We're 40 days or so ahead of Rosh Hashanah, so Shavuot is a distant memory. 35 days, whatever it is. So it says about Shavuot, chapter 16, verses 10 and 11. V'asita chaga Shavuot la'Hashem Elokecha misat nidvat yadcha asher titen kasher yivarechecha Hashem Elokecha. You're going to observe, you're going to keep this holiday of Shavuot, and you're going to bring your contributions, your sacrifices to Hashem, just as Hashem has blessed you. And you're going to be happy in front of Hashem, your God. Ata, you, Vincha, and your son, Vitcha, and your daughter, Avdecha, and your servant, Amatecha, and your female servant, V'halevi, Asher Bisharecha, and the Levi that's in your gates, V'hager, V'hayatom, V'halmana, and the ger, the convert, the orphan, the widow, all of them should be Asher B'kirbecha, all of them that are within your gates, all of them who live amongst you. You're going to go and you're going to, as the other pilgrimage holidays indicate as well, you're going to go to the place that Hashem chose. You're going to worship Him there, and everybody's going to be happy. The question is, and the Netziv in Hamek Davar deals with this. Why Shavuot? In other words, all of the holidays have a degree of obviously the pilgrimages and happiness, etc. So why does Hashem in His Torah seem to emphasize the joy of Shavuot more than the other holidays? Only with regard to Shavuot does it say this last part. You and your family and your servants and the why? Why any more than Sukkot? Sukkot, we're also happy. Pesach, writes in the Tziv. Arichut Lashon hu vaya rui l'chatuv halevi v'ager hayatom v'almana asher b'sharecha. All these people were being listed as people who are going to enjoy the holiday with you. Harei b'Sukkot k'tiv kain v'samuch. It says that it could have said that with Sukkot. Amar b'nei Chaim Berlin. B'ni, he says he quotes his son here. It says if you look in Shulchan Aruch Chaim 525 3 Gabe Tzedaka Govin Mechatzerot B'Yom Tov Aval Lo Yachrizu Kederech Shemachrizin B'Chol Ela Govin B'Tzina V'Notnim L'Toch Heikam, etc. The collectors of charity in those days, and there used to be somebody dedicated by the community to go and collect charity and then to distribute it properly to the people who need it. So those people, they did it differently before Yom Tov than they would ordinarily. Shavuot Shehu Yom Tov Katuv B'hanei Asher B'karbecha B'kirbecha Udi Shemshu B'chavanato Lo Ma Sheyesh B'ir Shehu B'firsom Ma She'en Ken B'sukkot Sheyesh Bo. There's Kol HaMoed Ketiv B'sharecha. So with regard to Sukkot, you have all of this time. It's a week long. Pesach, you have a long time to make sure people are happy. You can walk around, even on Chol HaMoed, you can collect tzedakah, make sure the poor are taken care of. Sheichziru likro lidvot b'shvil gerim yatom ve'almana shebe'ir. Just like that's why these people are mentioned. These people are the people who need the help the most. Now Hashem has His 4, and you have your 4. So especially, if you're making my 4 people happy, the Levi, the widow, the orphan, the ger, Hashem says those are mine, then I'll make your 4 people happy. Your 4 people, your son, your daughter, your wife, your servant, they're going to be blessed by your behavior towards my 4 people. Right? So, lesson here is, again, you want to see blessing? There's a strategy. There's a formula. A formula that, by the way, the Torah tells us that you can even test Hashem on this. You want to see blessing? Give tzedakah, and whatever tzedakah you give, guaranteed always, without exception, you're going to get paid back. You have a group of people you care about Hashem's group of people, and Hashem will therefore reward you and your group of people with the bracha that Hashem promises us. Okay. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's cool learning off every day. You learn stuff every year, something different.
Baruch Hashem.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.